My name is Claire Bennett. I was 43 when my younger sister held my 12-week ultrasound above her head at our mother's 70th birthday brunch and told 23 relatives I had printed it from the internet. It's fake, Natalie said, pinching the corner of the photograph. She wants Mom to feel guilty before the loan papers are signed. The loan was for $210,000, secured by the farmhouse I legally owned with our mother. The baby was real. Until that morning, only my husband, my doctor, and I knew how many years and failed treatments it had taken me to reach 12 weeks. I expected my mother to demand the picture back. Instead, she looked at me and said, "Claire, maybe you should go home before this gets uglier." So I left with my husband, an untouched slice of lemon cake, and an empty cream envelope. The ultrasound photograph stayed behind, bent between my sister's fingers. Natalie did not understand that the loan required my signature, the title records contradicted her assumptions, and my late father's file contained a protection an attorney would call me. About 3 days later. If you have ever been called dishonest by someone who depended on your silence, stay with me. In my family, Natalie was the person people watched, and I was the person people called when something stopped working. She was 4 years younger than I was, quick with names, quick with compliments, and gifted at making a room feel brighter when she entered it. Even as a child, she understood that affection could be created on demand. She remembered birthdays, brought flowers, cried openly, and made our mother laugh until she had to wipe her eyes. I was quieter. I made lists. I noticed when the electric bill was due and when Dad's truck needed an oil change. By the time I was 16, my mother was saying, "Ask Claire. She'll know." That sentence sounded like respect when I was young. It took me years to understand that it was also a job description. I became a payroll supervisor for a regional hospital outside Columbus, Ohio. It was not glamorous work, but I liked that numbers had rules. A missing decimal could be found. A deduction could be traced. When someone said a payment had been made, there was a date, an authorization, and a record. Families were different. In families, a gift could become an obligation without anyone admitting when the change occurred. My husband, Daniel Reeves, used to say I could reconcile a department of 600 employees but could not recognize when my own relatives were overdrawn on goodwill. Daniel was 46, a commercial electrical estimator, and patient in a way that never felt passive. He did not tell me what to do about my family. He asked questions I avoided answering. If the house belongs to everyone, he once asked, why does every invoice come to you? The house was called Willow House, though there were no willows on the property anymore. It sat on 6 acres in Delaware County, an old white farmhouse with a deep porch and a red barn that my father had spent 15 years repairing on weekends. Dad died 11 years before the birthday brunch, after a short fight with pancreatic cancer. His death rearranged all of us, but not evenly. My mother, Elaine, remained in the farmhouse. Natalie received Dad's brokerage account, valued at a little over $74,000, along with his restored pickup truck. I received his 50% interest in Willow House. My mother already owned the other half. At the time, Natalie said the division made sense. "You love paperwork and property stuff," she told me in the attorney's parking lot. I would have no idea what to do with half a house. What she meant was that she preferred cash. Within 3 years, most of it was gone. Some paid for her divorce. Some went into a children's clothing boutique that lasted 14 months. Some covered private school tuition for her daughter, Leah, during a period when Natalie said public school would crush her confidence. I never asked for an accounting. Because it was her inheritance. Willow House came with a mortgage balance of $118,000. Property taxes, an aging septic system, and a roof that leaked above the upstairs hallway. My mother could manage the utilities and groceries on her pension and Social Security, but not much more. I told myself Dad had left me half the property because he trusted me to keep it stable. For the first 2 years, Mom and I split the mortgage. Then she began calling 3 or 4 days before the payment was due. My prescription cost more this month, she would say. Or, Natalie needs help with Leah's braces. I'll catch up next month. She rarely caught up. I covered the difference because late payments made me anxious and because the thought of my mother losing the house where my father had planted every tree felt unbearable. By the 5th year, I was paying the full mortgage, the taxes, the insurance, and most major repairs. Mom paid utilities and spoke of the arrangement as though it were temporary. Natalie contributed in visible ways. She painted the porch planters. She organized Mother's day lunches. She posted photographs of Willow House online with captions about roots and legacy. When the barn roof needed replacement, she brought sandwiches to the crew. I paid $28,600 for the roof, but in family memory, Natalie had handled the project because she chose the charcoal shingles. I resented this more than I admitted. Then I felt ashamed for resenting it. That was my emotional weakness. I confused endurance with loyalty. I believed that if I explained myself calmly enough, paid one more bill, and prevented one more crisis, the family would eventually notice the difference between being loving and being useful. Each time they failed to notice, I worked harder. 5 years before the brunch, Natalie began using the barn for small events. At first it was harmless. A neighbor's anniversary dinner. A graduation party. A baby shower with borrowed tables and strings of warm lights. Natalie had always been good at decorating, and people praised her photographs. She created a social media page called Willow House Gatherings and asked whether she could host a few things during the summer. It will help Mom, she said. And it will keep the place alive. I agreed, provided she carried insurance and did not alter the structure without discussing it with me. She hugged me and said, "This is why you're the best. You think of the boring things, so I can make the beautiful things happen." That sentence should have warned me. The few summer events became 12 bookings the next year, then 21. Natalie bought chairs, linen, and an archway. She installed a small catering prep area using a handyman who accepted payment in cash. She told me the business barely broke even, so I did not charge rent. When I asked about insurance, she said her agent was taking care of it. When I asked about permits, she said the county had told her private family events were different. I wanted to see the paperwork. She always had a reason it was somewhere else. Then Leah got engaged. Leah was 24, thoughtful, observant, and far less like her mother than Natalie realized. She had completed nursing school and worked nights at a pediatric clinic. Her fiancé, Ben, taught middle school science. They wanted a small October wedding. Natalie wanted a showcase. This could put Willow House on the map, she told us over dinner. Once people see what we can do with a real wedding, the bookings will explode. The barn needed work before it could safely hold the 160 guests Natalie had invited in her imagination. It needed proper exits, accessible restrooms, upgraded electrical service, fire suppression, parking improvements, and a commercial kitchen if she intended to advertise full-service events. Daniel estimated the necessary work would exceed $150,000 before finishes. Natalie called that negative thinking. By then, Daniel and I had been trying to have a child for almost 5 years. We had endured 3 failed treatment cycles and 1 early loss I told almost no one about. My mother knew. We had appointments. Natalie knew we had spent money. Neither understood how grief could enter a marriage quietly, sit at the kitchen table, and leave no visible mess for anyone else to clean. When the 4th treatment finally worked, Daniel and I decided to wait until 12 weeks before telling the family. I carried the first ultrasound photograph in a cream envelope inside my purse for 9 days. Sometimes I opened it in the hospital parking garage before work. At first it looked like proof that something impossible had happened. Then it began to feel like a fragile promise I was afraid to speak aloud. During those same 9 days, Natalie sent me the loan proposal. She wanted my mother and me to borrow $210,000 against Willow House. The money would renovate the barn, pay off $43,000 in business debt, and provide what the packet called operating reserves. Natalie had already filled in most of the application. Beside my name, under co-owner consent, she had typed signature pending. I told her I needed time to review it. She replied, "We don't have time. Leah's wedding is in 4 months, and the contractor needs a deposit Friday." I said I would discuss it after Mom's birthday. That was the first boundary I had drawn in years, and Natalie treated it as a personal attack. My mother's birthday brunch took place on the back lawn of Willow House on the 2nd Sunday in May. Natalie had arranged long tables under a rented white canopy, with pale yellow napkins and jars of peonies down the center. She had made a seating chart for a family gathering, which told me the morning mattered to her as a performance. Daniel noticed it too. "You can still tell your mother privately," he said as we parked near the orchard. I touched the cream envelope inside my purse. "I don't want it to look like I'm avoiding Natalie." "You are allowed to avoid someone who turns every conversation into a vote." I gave him a look, but he was not wrong. Natalie greeted us beside the porch. She wore a green wrap dress and held a clipboard even though caterers were carrying the food. Her smile stayed in place when she hugged me. "Did you bring the signed pages?" "I brought Mom's gift." "Claire." "Not today." She lowered her voice. "The contractor is holding the estimate through tomorrow. If you drag this out, the price goes up, and Leah is the one who suffers." Leah, standing 10 feet away with Ben, heard her name and looked toward us. I said, "This is not Leah's responsibility, and it should not be used to rush a secured loan." Natalie's expression sharpened for half a second. Then Aunt Marjorie arrived, and my sister turned into sunlight again. For the first hour, I did what I always did. I helped Mom find the shawl she had misplaced. I moved a chair so Uncle Ray could sit without stepping on uneven ground. I found an extension cord when the coffee urn stopped heating. Natalie moved from table to table, receiving compliments. Mom seemed happy. That mattered to me. It was why I nearly waited another week. After the meal, Natalie tapped a spoon against her glass and gave a short speech about our mother being the center of the family. She spoke about Willow House, Dad's memory, Leah's upcoming wedding, and the next generation taking its place beneath this roof. Then she handed Mom a framed sketch of the renovated barn. I had never seen the sketch. It showed a glass entrance, a paved courtyard, a catering wing, and a sign reading Willow House Events, Natalie Cole, founder. There was applause. Mom pressed her fingers to her lips. "Oh, Natalie. Your father would be so proud." I looked at Daniel. He did not move, but the muscles beside his mouth tightened. Natalie raised her glass again. "And this dream becomes real as soon as the family paperwork is complete." That was how she announced my consent before I had given it. I could have confronted her in front of everyone. Instead, I waited until the cake had been cut. I found Mom near the hydrangeas, away from the tables, and handed her the cream envelope. "This is something, Daniel, and I wanted to tell you quietly," I said. She opened it, slid out the ultrasound photograph, and stared. For a moment she did not understand. Then her eyes filled. "Claire? Is this?" I nodded. 12 weeks on Tuesday. Everything looked good at the last appointment. She covered her mouth and made a sound I had not heard since Dad died, a small, unguarded sob. She pulled me against her, and I let myself believe the morning had been saved. Then Natalie walked over. "What is it?" she asked. Mom turned the photograph toward her. "Your sister is having a baby." Natalie did not congratulate me. She looked first at the photograph, then at my face, and then at Daniel. Her eyes moved with the speed of someone recalculating a plan. "At 43? Daniel said, "Yes, Natalie. At 43. She reached for the photograph. Mom gave it to her before I could stop her. Natalie studied the image. The clinic name was printed across the top, along with my name, the date, and a line of medical abbreviations. She rubbed her thumb across the glossy edge. "This isn't even convincing," she said. I thought I had misheard her. "What?" She lifted the photograph higher. Several people nearby turned toward us. "It's fake," Natalie said. "She printed it from the internet." Mom whispered, "Natalie, don't." But my sister was already speaking to the gathering, not to us. "I'm sorry, but everyone needs to understand what she's doing. She waits until Mom's birthday, right after we discuss the loan, and suddenly there's a miracle baby. She wants Mom emotional before the papers are signed." The conversations under the canopy stopped one by one. I said, "Give me the picture. There are thousands of these online. You can add a name to anything now. Give it back." She held it against her chest. "Then show us the medical portal. Show us an appointment. If it's real, why are you hiding it? There are humiliations that make you angry immediately, and there are humiliations so precise that your mind becomes strangely practical." I noticed the smear of frosting on Natalie's left thumb. I noticed that the photograph had bent slightly where she gripped it. I noticed Aunt Marjorie looking down at her plate, pretending she had not heard. I also noticed my mother was not defending me. Daniel stepped forward. "You do not get access to Claire's medical records because you made an accusation at a birthday party. Hand her the photograph." Natalie gave a short laugh. "Of course you're in on it. You both need a reason to keep control of the property. A baby gives Claire a perfect excuse to say she needs security." Leah said, "Mom, stop." Natalie turned on her. "You stay out of this. This affects your wedding." That sentence exposed more than she intended. Leah's face changed. Not dramatically. She simply looked tired. I held out my hand. "Last time. Give me the photograph." Mom finally spoke, but not to Natalie. "Claire, maybe you should go home before this gets uglier." I looked at her for several seconds. "You want me to leave?" "I want everyone to calm down. Natalie has been under terrible pressure. We can discuss this Privately. She called my pregnancy fake in front of the family. Mom's voice dropped. And standing here arguing will not make it better. There it was, the rule I had lived under since childhood. Natalie could create the emergency. I was responsible for restoring peace. I took my purse from the back of my chair. Daniel collected our coats even though the day was warm. As we walked toward the car, I heard Natalie say, "See? She won't prove it." I stopped. Daniel put one hand lightly against my back. "You don't owe them a performance." So I kept walking. We drove 7 miles before I realized I was still holding the little paper box containing my untouched cake. I set it on the floor and began to cry without sound. Daniel pulled into an empty church parking lot and turned off the engine. "I should have said more," I told him. "You said enough. They'll believe her. Some of them will believe whatever costs them the least." I hated that sentence because it was true. At home, I opened the patient portal on my laptop. My test results, appointment notes, payment receipts, and ultrasound report were all there. For 10 minutes I considered taking screenshots and sending them to the family group chat. Daniel sat across from me at the kitchen table. "Will that make you feel safer?" "It will prove she lied." "No. It will prove you are willing to surrender private information whenever Natalie demands it. Those are not the same thing." I closed the laptop. At 6:18 that evening, Mom called. I let it ring twice before answering. "Your sister is upset," she began. I almost laughed. "Natalie is upset? She thinks you chose today to undermine the loan." "I chose today to tell my mother she was going to have a grandchild." "I know, honey. I do. But the timing was unfortunate." "The timing of my pregnancy?" "That is not what I meant. I waited for her to say she believed me. She did not. Instead, she asked, 'Could you at least sign the preliminary authorization so the bank can continue? It doesn't mean you are accepting the final terms.'" My grief turned cold and clear. "No." Mom went quiet. I had said no to my mother before, but usually with padding. "Not this week. Let me check." I wish I could. This time there was one word and nothing behind it. "Claire, please don't punish everyone because Natalie behaved badly." "I am not punishing anyone. I am refusing to secure her business debt with my home." "It is my home too." "Exactly. Which is why neither of us should sign anything we do not understand." She ended the call by saying she was disappointed in me. At 10:41, Leah texted, "I am sorry about today. I should have taken the picture from her." A second message arrived before I could answer. "Mom told us last night that you might fake a pregnancy announcement because you couldn't stand my wedding getting attention. She had this planned." I didn't believe her, but I didn't warn you either. "I am really sorry." I read the message 3 times. The betrayal at the brunch had felt impulsive, ugly, and cruel. Leah's text made it deliberate. Natalie had prepared an explanation for my pregnancy before she even knew whether there was a pregnancy to explain. I typed, "None of this is your fault. Your wedding gift from Daniel and me is still yours. We will pay vendors directly, as planned." Leah replied with one line. "Please don't sign the loan for me." That was the first person in my family who said what I needed to hear. On Monday morning, I went to work early and did what I had always done when emotions became unreliable. I opened a spreadsheet. I listed every known cost connected to Willow House for the previous 11 years. Mortgage payments, property taxes, insurance premiums, roof replacement, septic repairs, furnace, tree removal, the new well pump. I had records for nearly all of it because I had paid by check or bank transfer. The total I had contributed above my legal half was $103,840. I stared at the number for a long time. I had known it was substantial. Seeing it in one cell was different. That amount did not include the hours I spent meeting contractors, disputing assessments, or managing renewals. It did not include the $12,000 I had lent Natalie during her divorce, of which she had repaid $2,000. It did not include the 7 years of free barn use. At 9:15, a man named Richard Hale from Great Lakes Community Bank called my office. Ms. Bennett, I am following up on the commercial property improvement application for Willow House Events. We need to verify your authorization as a co-owner. I closed my office door. I have not authorized an application. There was a pause. We have a preliminary package identifying you as a consenting owner, with final signature pending. Who submitted it? The business applicant, Natalie Cole, with Elaine Bennett as proposed borrower. Please mark the file clearly that I do not consent to any lien, mortgage, guarantee, or use of my ownership interest. Send me a copy of everything I am legally entitled to receive. His tone became more formal. I can note that. You may also wish to speak with counsel. That afternoon, the packet arrived through the bank's secure portal. It was 87 pages. Natalie had described Willow House Events as a 5-year-old venue with average annual revenue of $280,000. She projected $420,000 after renovations. I had seen no tax returns supporting those numbers. The application listed the farmhouse and all 6 acres as the business location. It identified Natalie as founder and managing operator. Under property control, it said, family-owned. Long-term operational authority granted. No such authority existed. Attached was a letter titled Owner Acknowledgement. My mother's signature appeared at the bottom. Mine did not. Instead, someone had typed my full legal name beneath a blank line and added, verbal approval confirmed, wet signature to follow after family celebration. The phrase family celebration made me feel physically ill. I called Mom. Did you tell the bank I approved the loan? Natalie said the application had to be submitted to hold the rate. That is not what I asked. Did you tell them I approved it? I said you were reviewing it. The letter says my verbal approval was confirmed. She sighed as though I were focusing on a technicality. Then Natalie worded it badly. That can be corrected. Mom, did you read the revenue figures? She explained them. Did you see tax returns? I trust my daughter. I almost said, you have 2 daughters. Instead, I asked for the business records. Mom said, you are making this into an investigation. It became an investigation when someone told a bank I had agreed to secure a loan. Natalie called 5 minutes later. Why are you harassing Mom? Send me the last 3 years of business tax returns, bank statements, booking contracts, insurance certificate, and permits. She gave a sharp breath. You are not my accountant. You are asking me to risk my ownership interest. The house has plenty of equity. Equity is not income. How will the loan be repaid? From bookings. You saw the projections. I saw claims. I asked for records. She became quiet, then changed tactics. Claire, I am sorry about yesterday. I shouldn't have challenged you in front of people. But you have to admit the announcement looked strategic. It was not an apology. It was a request that I participate in my own accusation. Send the records, I said. Are you really pregnant? I ended the call. The next inconsistency arrived through an ordinary envelope. Our homeowner's insurer sent an annual renewal questionnaire to both owners. One question asked whether the property was used for weddings, paid events, short-term rentals, or other commercial activity. The previous year's form, completed by my mother, had all 4 boxes marked no. I called the agent and asked what coverage existed for the barn events. He said, our file describes occasional non-commercial family gatherings. If there is a business operating on site, we need to reevaluate immediately. Would the current policy cover a paying guest injured during an event? I cannot give a coverage opinion on a hypothetical claim, but I can tell you the commercial exposure was not disclosed. I wrote down every word. Daniel reviewed the electrical photographs from Natalie's social media page that evening. He zoomed in on the catering area. Those receptacles were added after I last inspected the barn, he said. And that panel is not sized for what she's running. Could it be dangerous? It could be overloaded. I would not put 160 people in there until a licensed electrician and the county look at it. I felt another layer of guilt, because I had allowed the events to continue without insisting on proof. My name was on the deed. If someone was hurt, saying Natalie told me it was handled would not undo the injury. On Wednesday, Leah came to our house after her shift. She looked exhausted. She carried the cream envelope I had left at Willow House. I found it under the gift table, she said. Inside was the ultrasound photograph. A crease ran diagonally through the black border. There was a small frosting mark near the date. I held it by the edges. I'm sorry, Leah said again. You did not do this. I knew Mom was getting desperate about the loan. I didn't know how desperate. She told us Natalie had already taken deposits for 9 events scheduled after the proposed renovation. 3 contracts promised indoor capacity of 200 guests. 2 included use of a commercial kitchen that did not exist. The deposits totaled more than $60,000. Where is the money? I asked. Leah looked down. She said some went to business debt and some to the contractor. But the contractor keeps calling her. I don't think he got it. Daniel asked, does Ben know? Not all of it. Mom says if the loan closes, everything works. She keeps saying the money is only out of order, not missing. That phrase stayed with me, out of order. In payroll, money could be late, misclassified, incorrectly withheld, or diverted. It could not be out of order in a way that made obligations disappear. Leah reached into her bag and handed me a printed event contract. Natalie had used the Willow House name, the property address, and a logo featuring the outline of the farmhouse. The contract said the venue had exclusive legal control of the premises. At the bottom, under property representative, was my mother's name. Did Mom sign this? I asked. I don't know. The signature looked like hers. That did not make the promise true. I put the contract beside the ultrasound photograph on the kitchen table. One was an image my sister had called fraudulent even though it was real. The other was a document she treated as legitimate even though it promised rights she did not possess. For the first time, the pattern became impossible to ignore. Natalie did not decide what was true by examining evidence. She decided what needed to be true for her plan to continue. The following Friday, I met with Margaret Sloan, the attorney who had handled my father's estate. Her office occupied the second floor of a brick building above a pharmacy in downtown Delaware. I brought the bank packet, the insurance questionnaire, the event contract, and my spreadsheet of Willow House expenses. Margaret was in her early 60s, with silver hair cut at her chin and a habit of reading every page before offering an opinion. She did not react when I explained the birthday brunch. She only asked, "Do you have the original estate binder?" "Mom keeps it in Dad's green metal file box." "Then we need the complete binder, including the property agreement behind the deed." I did not remember a property agreement. Margaret turned her monitor toward me and opened the county recorder's index. There was the deed showing Mom and me as equal tenants in common. Directly beneath it was a right of first refusal memorandum recorded with Dad's estate documents 11 years earlier. A separate reimbursement agreement had been recorded 8 years earlier, after I refinanced my condo to save the property. I felt embarrassed. I remember signing the reimbursement papers. I didn't remember the other document. Most people remember the crisis, not every page created around it, she said. 8 years earlier, Willow House had been 3 payments from foreclosure after Mom used money set aside for the mortgage to help Natalie through her divorce. I had borrowed against my own condo and advanced $62,000 to bring the loan current, repair the septic system, and pay delinquent taxes. Margaret had insisted the advance be documented. The reimbursement agreement said that any amount I paid above my half of property obligations would be repaid from my mother's share upon a sale, transfer, or refinance. The earlier estate memorandum gave me the first right to buy her interest at an independently appraised price before she could transfer it to anyone else. Read together, the documents meant my reimbursement would be settled as part of any buyout. "This does not let you take her half," Margaret said. "It does mean she cannot pledge or transfer around your recorded rights. Any competent title search should find both filings. Natalie thinks Mom can sign the property over to her. She cannot do that cleanly without addressing your right and the reimbursement balance. And no lender will accept a first position lien on the whole property without your consent." The final page of the estate memorandum contained my father's initials beside a handwritten paragraph. Margaret explained that Dad had asked for the right of first refusal because he feared Mom might be pressured into borrowing against the house after he was gone. I read the paragraph twice. It did not mention Natalie. It did not need to. Dad had seen the pattern before I was willing to name it. That realization did not feel like victory. It felt like grief arriving 11 years late. Margaret asked whether I wanted to stop all events immediately. "I want the property safe," I said. "And I want Leah's wedding protected from this mess." "Then offer a legitimate path. Put it in writing. If they reject it, your next decision becomes clearer." Daniel and I spent the weekend building that path. We hired a commercial inspector to identify required upgrades. We requested an independent appraisal. I asked a small business accountant to review any records Natalie was willing to provide. We drafted a 5-year barn lease under which Natalie would pay $1,200 a month for the first year, carry proper liability coverage, obtain permits, keep client deposits in a separate account, and provide quarterly statements. Rent would increase only after the first year, and half of it would be credited toward approved safety improvements. I also offered a solution for Leah's wedding. Daniel and I would preserve our $18,000 gift, but we would pay vendors directly. If the barn could not receive an occupancy approval in time, we would apply the money to another venue. No debt against Willow House. No surprise obligations. It was more generous than Daniel thought wise. "I know," I told him. I need to be certain I tried. He nodded. Then try once. Not forever. We invited Mom, Natalie, Leah, and Ben to our house on Sunday afternoon. I placed copies of the proposal at each seat. The ultrasound photograph remained in its cream envelope on the sideboard. I did not intend to use my pregnancy as evidence in a property discussion. Natalie arrived 20 minutes late and did not sit down. Is this a legal ambush? It is a lease proposal and a wedding plan, I said. She flipped through the pages. $1,200 a month? For our own barn? For commercial use of property you do not own. Mom frowned. Claire, that sounds harsh. It is below market rent. The insurance and permits are not optional. Natalie tossed the packet onto the table. You want control. That is what this has always been about. I kept my voice level. I am offering you 5 years of stable use, a credit toward improvements, and a way to honor every legitimate booking. While you inspect my accounts like I am a criminal. You asked me to guarantee $210,000. Financial records are not an insult. They are the minimum. Leah said quietly, Mom, the separate deposit account is normal. Natalie looked at her as though she had changed sides in a war. You don't understand. Business. Ben spoke for the first time. We understand that we don't want our wedding tied to a loan. Claire doesn't want. Mom began crying. She said Dad would hate seeing us divided. That sentence had been used so often in our family that it had lost any connection to what Dad might actually have wanted. I gave Natalie 14 days to accept the lease framework, provide records, and pause new bookings until coverage and permits were confirmed. She stood at the door with her coat over one arm. And if I don't? I withdraw permission for commercial use of my half of the property. I inform the bank in writing. And I pursue a formal division or buyout. She looked at me for a long moment. You would sell Mom's home over a piece of paper and a bruised ego. No. I am trying to keep her home from becoming collateral for promises you already made. Natalie left the proposal on the table. 2 days later, she posted online that an unnamed family member was trying to erase a woman-owned business out of jealousy. Relatives began calling Mom. Mom began calling me. I did not answer every call. That was new. During the 14-day deadline, Natalie sent no tax returns, no bank statements, no insurance certificate, and no permit records. She did send 3 messages asking whether I had come to my senses. My mother left a voicemail saying stress was affecting her blood pressure. Aunt Marjorie wrote that even if Natalie had made mistakes, family should not use legal documents against family. I wanted to ask what legal documents were for if they disappeared whenever family wanted something. Instead, I followed Margaret's advice. Every communication was brief, factual, and in writing. On the 5th day, Great Lakes Community Bank denied the application because all owners had not consented and the commercial use documentation was incomplete. Natalie called me. Within 10 minutes. You killed the loan. I declined to secure it. Same thing. No. The same thing would be if the loan belonged to me. It does not. She said the contractor would sue her, clients would demand refunds, and Leah's wedding would be ruined. Each consequence was described as something I was doing rather than something she had risked before asking permission. Accept the lease framework, I said. Open the records. We can still stabilize this. I will never pay you rent for Dad's barn. Then you are choosing not to operate there. She hung up. The next morning, the insurance agent issued a notice that the homeowner policy would not renew unless commercial events stopped or separate coverage was bound. This was not something I had secretly arranged. The insurer had learned the truth because I answered its questionnaire accurately. Natalie called that betrayal too. The commercial inspector found overloaded circuits, inadequate exit lighting, and unprotected loft stair, and restrooms that could not support the advertised capacity. None of the problems was impossible to repair. Together, they made the barn unsuitable for paid gatherings at the scale Natalie had promised. I sent formal notice that no commercial event could take place after 30 days without written proof of coverage and required approvals. I allowed 2 small events already scheduled within that period to proceed if Natalie hired security, limited attendance, and obtained temporary event insurance. I was still trying to reduce harm. She booked another wedding instead. Leah forwarded me the confirmation email. It promised a September date, 200 guests, a licensed catering kitchen, and exclusive access to Willow House. The client had paid a $9,000 deposit. That was the moment my uncertainty ended. I had spent years believing Natalie acted recklessly because she assumed someone would save her. The new contract showed something harder. She was creating obligations, specifically to make rescue feel unavoidable. The more people she placed behind her, Mom, Leah, clients, vendors, the crueler my refusal would appear. I could not keep calling that helplessness. Margaret filed a petition for partition and requested mediation before any sale process. It was not an eviction. It was a legal method for co-owners who could no longer agree on use, expenses, or risk. The petition asked first for a negotiated buyout. A sale would occur only if no agreement could be reached. When the papers were delivered, Mom came to my office lobby without calling. She looked smaller than she had at the birthday brunch. "Are you selling my house?" I took her into an empty conference room. "I am asking us to settle ownership before more debt is created. You can buy my half, I can buy yours, or we can agree to sell. I cannot buy you out. Then let me buy your interest at the appraised value. You can use the proceeds to purchase a smaller home with no stairs. And Natalie loses everything. Natalie does not own Willow House." Mom stared at the table. "Your father intended it for both of you. Dad left Natalie $74,000 and left me half the property with its debt. Those were his actual instructions. She was younger. She made mistakes. She is 39. Mom's eyes filled. "You have always been stronger." That sentence finally sounded as unfair as it was. Strength, in my family, had become the reason I deserved less protection. I slid a copy of the lease offer across the table. There is still a path that does not require a sale. Natalie can operate legally under a lease. Or she can move the business. Mom pushed the paper back. "She says you are doing this because she exposed the pregnancy lie." For a second, I could not speak. Then I opened my phone, found the appointment report, and placed it on the table. Not because Mom had a right to demand it, but because I needed to understand her choice. She read my name, the date, the gestational age, and the physician's note. Her face changed. Slowly. "Oh, Claire. Did you believe her?" I didn't know what to believe. "You knew me. That should have counted." She reached for my hand. I moved it into my lap. When she left, she took the medical report copy I had printed for her. I kept the ultrasound photograph. I no longer saw it as proof I needed to offer. It was mine again. Mediation took place 6 weeks later in a plain conference room with beige walls, a water pitcher, and no audience. That suited me. I had spent enough of my life watching Natalie turn witnesses into weapons. The independent appraisal valued Willow House at $540,000 in its current condition. The barn's unpermitted alterations added little value and created repair costs. The recorded reimbursement balance, supported by bank records and invoices, was $103,840. Under the agreement, that amount would be credited from Mom's share if her interest was sold or refinanced. Natalie arrived with Mom and a lawyer she had hired 2 days earlier. She brought the framed renovation sketch from the birthday brunch and placed it against the wall as though vision could outrank title. Her lawyer began by arguing that the venue had established operational value and that ending it would harm multiple parties. Margaret asked for tax returns, deposit account records, permits, and proof of insurance. None was produced. Then Natalie proposed what she called the fair family solution. Mom would transfer her half to Natalie would refinance after the transfer, and I would be repaid over time from business profits. Margaret opened the estate binder. That transfer cannot occur as proposed, she said. Ms. Bennett holds a recorded right of first refusal and a reimbursement claim triggered by transfer or refinance. Natalie blinked. What reimbursement claim? Margaret passed copies across the table. For the first time, my sister read the two protections together: Dad's recorded right of first refusal from the estate file and Mom's notarized reimbursement agreement from the foreclosure rescue. She saw his initials, her signature, and both county recording stamps. Mom, you signed this? Mom whispered. Claire was putting in a lot of money. Margaret said it had to be protected. Natalie turned to me. You hid this. It has been recorded publicly for 8 years. The original is in Dad's file box. You knew this whole time? I remembered the reimbursement agreement. I did not remember the right of first refusal. Until Margaret reviewed the title. She looked at her lawyer, who read the pages and said nothing for nearly a minute. The strongest reversal was not that I had discovered a secret weapon. It was that the family had treated my work, my payments, and my legal ownership as invisible for so long that ordinary documentation felt to Natalie like an ambush. I made one final offer. I would purchase Mom's half at the appraised value, subtract the documented reimbursement from her side as the agreement required, and cover closing costs. Mom would receive the remaining equity and have 4 months to move. I would also contribute up to $18,000 toward relocating Leah's wedding, as promised. Natalie could remove her business equipment from the barn without charge. Existing clients would receive honest notice and access for pickup or inspections, but no new events would be held without approval. Alternatively, Mom and Natalie could buy my half under the same appraisal, provided they paid the reimbursement balance and released me from every property obligation. The mediator asked whether they had financing. They did not. Natalie said, "You know we can't do that." Then the first option keeps Mom from a forced sale and gives her substantial equity. And gives you the house. It gives me the half I already own and the half I am paying fair value to purchase. She pushed back from the table. All because I said one thing at a party. I had carried the cream envelope in my bag, though I had not planned to show it. I took out the creased ultrasound photograph and placed it between us. This is not because you said one thing. This is because you lied about this, lied to the bank about my consent, lied to the insurer about commercial use, and sold dates you had no authority to promise. Then, when I gave you a legal path forward, you booked another wedding. Natalie looked at the photograph but did not touch it. You wanted everyone to believe the real document was fake, I continued, and the false promises were real. I am done living inside that arrangement. Mom began to cry. Natalie did not. She stared at the framed sketch across the room, at the sign with her name painted beneath a building she did not own. The mediation ended with Mom accepting my buyout, subject to financing and closing. Daniel and I qualified for a mortgage using our combined income and the equity in my existing half. There was no instant judgment, no dramatic arrest, and no cheering crowd. There were appraisals, disclosures, signatures, and 37 days of difficult silence. Karma arrived through ordinary channels. Over the next 5 months, without the property as free collateral, Natalie's renovation financing disappeared. Without insurance and occupancy approval, the autumn bookings had to be cancelled or moved. Because she had spent part of the deposits on old debts, she could not refund everyone immediately. 2 clients obtained civil judgments. She sold her SUV, closed Willow House events, and took a salaried job coordinating banquets at a hotel where contracts, deposits, and capacity limits were handled by other departments. Leah moved her wedding to a restored community arts hall. It held 90 people, not 160. Ben's students made paper constellations for the tables. Daniel and I paid the venue and caterer directly. The wedding was warm, safe, and far more like Leah than the showcase her mother had planned. Natalie attended, but she did not give the speech she had written about family legacy. Leah asked her to keep it simple. That consequence hurt Natalie more than losing the barn. Her daughter had stopped allowing her to define what love was supposed to look like. Mom purchased a 2-bedroom condominium 12 minutes from Willow House. It had an elevator, a small balcony, and no septic system for anyone to panic about. The sale left her with enough money to live comfortably if she stopped funding Natalie's emergencies. Whether she would stop completely was not something I could control. Our relationship changed. She apologized for asking me to leave the birthday brunch, but her apology included the sentence, "I was trying to protect both my daughters." I told her sending the accused person away had protected only one of us. We spoke every week, then every other week. She attended 2 prenatal appointments after. I invited her, but I did not give her unlimited access to my fear or my plans. Love remained. Trust returned more slowly. Natalie sent one email 3 months after mediation. I was under unbearable pressure, and I handled things badly. I should not have said the picture was fake in front of everyone. I hope someday you can understand why I panicked. I answered with 3 sentences. I understand that you were afraid. Fear does not excuse what you did. Any future relationship between us will require honesty and a direct apology without blaming the pressure. She did not reply. Our son, Samuel, was born 7 weeks after Leah's wedding. He arrived early but healthy enough to come home after 9 days. On his second night in the nursery at Willow House, I sat in the old rocking chair Dad had repaired for me years before and looked at the ultrasound photograph. The crease from Natalie's hand was still visible. So was the faint frosting mark. I had considered requesting a clean reprint, but I kept the damaged original. At first, that photograph had represented hope. At the brunch, it became an object of humiliation. During mediation, it became a boundary, not proof of my pregnancy, but proof that I would no longer let someone else decide which parts of my life were real. After Samuel was born, it became something simpler. It was the first picture of my child, imperfectly handled and still true. Daniel framed it beside a photograph of Samuel asleep with one fist beneath his chin. He did not crop out the crease. Willow House is quieter now. The barn is used for storage while we complete safety repairs. Slowly, without loans we cannot afford. Sometimes I miss the lights, the music, and even the noise of Natalie's events. Boundaries can bring peace, but peace has its own grief. It shows you how much activity was created by crisis and how many relationships depended on you. Preventing consequences. I did not win my family back. I stopped losing myself to keep its old shape intact. That is the mature truth I carry from all of it. A boundary does not destroy a healthy relationship. It reveals whether the relationship had room for your safety, your dignity, and your no. Would you have signed the loan to protect the family and the wedding, or drawn the same line I did?